My neighbor built his fence 4.7 feet inside my property line, swallowed my daughter's treehouse. Here's what happened. I've been going back and forth about posting this for a while now. Part of me still can't believe it happened, and another part of me wants every homeowner out there to know what they might be dealing with if they've got a neighbor who thinks property lines are suggestions. This is long. I'm sorry. But if I'm going to tell it, I'm going to tell all of it. My name's Derek. I'm 44. I live in Independence, Missouri, east side of Kansas City, for anyone not familiar. I'm a fleet manager for a plumbing company, been there 11 years, make about $68,000 a year. My wife Stacy cuts hair. She rents a chair at a salon on Noland Road and brings in about $40,000. Between the two of us, we're comfortable. Not rich. Not struggling. We make it work. We've got 2 kids. Hopper is 13. Jackson is 10. And we've got Biscuit, a beagle with about 4 brain cells, all of them dedicated to running laps along our back fence line and barking at squirrels he will never catch. In 2016, Stacy and I bought a 3-bedroom split-level on South Sterling Avenue for $172,000. It's worth about $248,000 now, thanks to the market, not because of anything we've done. The house is fine. It's a solid house. But the reason we bought it, the actual reason we signed on the dotted line, was the backyard. 0.38 acres. Almost 2/5 of an acre behind a split level in a suburb. That's not common. Our realtor called it the unicorn lot. Stacy called it room for the kids to be kids. And they were. When Harper was 7, I built her a treehouse in the southeast corner of the yard. Took me 3 weekends and 4 trips to Lowe's. It's not fancy. Plywood, 2x4s, a rope ladder, a little railing. Stacy painted turquoise. But Harper loved it. She'd go up there with a book and a juice box and not come down for hours. She's 13 now, and she still goes up there. She reads up there. She draws up there. When she's mad at us, she goes up there to cool down instead of slamming her door, which, honestly, I think is a better system than most teenagers have figured out. Jackson, my 10-year-old, uses every inch of that backyard. Every single evening in the summer, he and I throw a football. He's got an arm. He's got this thing where he runs to the far back corner, pivots, and I throw a deep ball. It's our routine. It's our thing. And Biscuit has worn an actual visible dirt path along the back fence from doing his laps. You can see it from the kitchen window. A little beagle highway, worn right into the grass. That backyard is not just space. It's where my family lives. Gerald Pruitt. Gerald is 61 years old, lives to the east of U.S., and has been in his house for 22 years. Retired Kansas City police officer. He and his wife Pam have no kids at home, no dog, no hobbies that I can see other than maintaining a lawn that looks like the 18th green at Augusta. I'm not exaggerating. The man edge trims with a level. I've seen him on his hands and knees pulling individual weeds out of his flower beds with tweezers. I'm not making that up. Actual tweezers. Gerald has always been what I'd charitably call particular. Over the years, we've had a handful of interactions that should have been red flags, but at the time just felt like the cost of living next to a retired guy with too much time on his hands. First time was 2017, maybe 2018. Biscuit was barking in the backyard. It was 2 in the afternoon on a Saturday. A Saturday. Gerald came to my door and asked me to address the noise. I said sure, brought Biscuit inside, didn't think much of it. Happened one more time about 6 months later. Same deal, mid-afternoon, Saturday, Biscuit being a beagle. I brought him in. Then in 2019, Gerald reported my Christmas lights to the HOA. Not a noise complaint. Not a safety issue. He said they were excessively bright and created light pollution that was visible from his bedroom window. The HOA sent me a polite letter that basically said, "Your neighbor complained, and we don't really have a rule about this, but could you maybe angle them differently?" I angled them differently. Fine. Whatever. The last one, and this is the one that, looking back, I should have paid more attention to. Gerald left a typed letter in my mailbox. Typed. On printer paper. With a header that said, "Notice of concern." In it, he explained that our basketball hoop in the driveway was having an adverse aesthetic impact on the neighborhood and he was requesting its voluntary removal. Stacy read it and laughed so hard she cried. I stuck it on the fridge for a while as a joke. We left the basketball hoop exactly where it was. I always wrote Gerald off. Retired. Bored. Fussy. Harmless. The kind of neighbor you roll your eyes about over beers but never actually worry about. I was wrong about the harmless part. Update 1. The fence goes up. About 8 months ago, I came home from work and noticed a crew in Gerald's backyard. 3 guys, post-hole digger, stacks of cedar planks. Gerald was out there in a polo shirt and khakis, pointing and gesturing like a general directing troops. By the end of the week, he had a brand new 6-foot cedar privacy fence. Professional looking, too. Stained a nice warm brown. Ran about 85 feet along what I assumed was the property line between our yards. I'll be honest, my first thought was, good. Now I don't have to see him standing in his yard staring at my kids. My second thought was, wait. It happened slowly. The realization. Like when you look at a picture and something's off but you can't quite place it. The fence just felt close. Too close. It was eating into the backyard in a way that didn't look right, but I didn't have the mental framework to process it immediately. Jackson figured it out before I did. One evening about 2 weeks after the fence went up, he ran to the back corner to catch a long pass, and he hit the fence. Not the old back fence. Gerald's new fence. It was in the way. He couldn't get to the corner. "Dad," he said, "the fence is in the way." I walked back there and stood next to it. I looked at where the old property line had been, or where I thought it had been, and I looked at the fence. I said, mostly to myself, that fence seems close. Stacy was standing on the back porch. She'd been watching. "That fence is close," she said. "Look, the treehouse is on the other side." I turned around. She was right. Harper's treehouse, the one I built with my own hands, in the corner of my own yard, bolted to a red oak tree that is on my property, was now on the other side of Gerald's fence. Fenced off. Enclosed in Gerald's yard. I stood there staring at it through the cedar slats. The turquoise railing. The rope ladder hanging limp. I walked inside, went to the filing cabinet in the basement, and pulled out the survey from when we bought the house in 2016. I laid it on the kitchen table and compared it to what I was seeing through the window. The property line was clearly marked. And Gerald's fence was clearly not on it. That night, after the kids were in bed, I told Stacy I was going to hire a surveyor. She said, "How much?" I said I didn't know. She said, "Do it." She didn't even pause. Update 2, the survey, Gerald's reaction, and the city's non-answer. I called around and found Thomas Reed at Cornerstone Land Surveying in Lee's Summit. He came out on a Thursday morning. Cost me $650, which hurt, but I needed it in writing from a licensed professional. Thomas spent about 2 hours walking the property with his equipment. He drove orange stakes into the ground along the true property line. When he was done, he stood with me in the backyard and pointed at Gerald's fence. 4 feet, 8.5 inches, Thomas said. The fence is 4.7 feet inside your property. Inside mine, I repeated, just to make sure I understood. Inside yours. Not on the line. Not near the line. This isn't even a borderline case. This is clearly on your land. I did the rough math in my head. 85 feet long, nearly 5 feet deep. That's roughly 400 square feet of my backyard, my property, now sitting on the other side of Gerald's fence. Including the corner. Including the treehouse. 400 square feet. That's the size of a large bedroom. Just taken. I'm a reasonable person. I really am. Ask anyone who knows me. I don't start fights. I don't raise my voice. I manage a fleet of 22 plumbing vans and the guys who drive them, and I do it without yelling. So I did what I thought was the right thing. I walked next door, rang Gerald's doorbell, and showed him the survey. "Gerald," I said, "I had a survey done. Your fence is 4.5 feet inside my property line." Gerald looked at the survey. He looked at me. And he said, with complete calm and absolute confidence, "Your survey is wrong. I had my own survey done." "Can I see it?" I asked. "I don't have to show you anything. The fence is on my property." And he stepped back inside his house and closed the door. Not slammed it. Closed it. Click. I stood on his porch for about 10 seconds, just processing. Then I went home. The next day, I went to the City of Independence Code Enforcement Office. I filed a complaint. A code officer named Randy came out a few days later. Nice guy. He looked at the survey, he looked at the fence, he walked back and forth a few times, and then he turned to me and said the words that I've come to learn are the suburban homeowner's version of "good luck." Looks like an encroachment to me. But we don't handle property line disputes. That's a civil matter. You'll need to go to court. He handed me a pamphlet. An actual pamphlet. Property disputes. Understanding your options. I still have it. It's in my filing cabinet next to the survey, As a souvenir of the moment, I realized that being clearly, provably, obviously right was not going to be enough. Update 3, Court, Gerald's lawyer, and $4,800 I didn't have to spare. I went to the Jackson County Courthouse and filed a petition for encroachment removal. This is the formal legal way of saying, your stuff is on my land, please remove it. It sounds simple. It is not simple. Nothing involving courthouses is simple. Gerald hired a lawyer. A guy named Phil from a firm on the Country Club Plaza in KC. Phil had the kind of energy that you imagine when you think of a lawyer who charges $350 an hour and bills for the time it takes him to read your email. Phil filed a counterclaim arguing two things. First, adverse possession. Phil argued that Gerald had been maintaining the disputed strip of land, meaning mowing it, for years, which supposedly created an implied boundary and gave Gerald a claim to the land. Second, Phil argued that I had acquiesced to the fence by not formally objecting within 30 days of its construction. I sat in my kitchen reading that counterclaim at 11 o'clock at night, and I felt a kind of anger I don't think I've ever felt before. Not hot anger. Cold anger. The kind where everything gets very still and very focused. This man built a fence on my property, swallowed my daughter's treehouse, and now he was arguing in court that the land was his because he'd been mowing it. He'd been mowing a strip of my lawn, and now he was claiming that gave him the right to keep it. I hired my own lawyer, Kim Gwynn, a solo practitioner in Blue Springs. Kim is about 5'2" and speaks very quietly, and she is absolutely terrifying in a courtroom, which I would later witness firsthand. Kim reviewed everything and told me the adverse possession claim was weak because Missouri requires 10 continuous years of uninterrupted possession, and Gerald had only built the fence 8 months ago. The mowing didn't count because it was permissive, not hostile. The acquiescence argument was equally thin because there's number 30-day objection window in Missouri encroachment law. This is a delay tactic, Kim told me. His lawyer knows this. He's billing Gerald by the hour, and he's billing you by the hour through delay. Every motion, every filing, every continuance costs you money. She was right. Phil was a machine. Motion to compel. Motion for continuance. Request for additional discovery. Request for mediation. Every 2 weeks, something new hit Kim's desk, and every time it did, my bill went up. By the time we were 3 months into the process, I had spent $4,800 in legal fees. Kim estimated the total could reach somewhere between $12,000 and $18,000. $12,000 to $18,000. To prove that my property was my property. That's a used car. That's half of Harper's college fund. That's the family vacation we'd been planning to Destin, Florida, that we quietly took off the calendar without telling the kids. And the whole time, Gerald's wife Pam would leave her house every morning, walk past our driveway, look me right in the eye, and say, "Good morning." Like nothing was happening. Like we weren't in court. Like her husband hadn't stolen part of my yard. I waved every time. Not because I wanted to. Because Stacy told me, early on, don't give them anything they can use against you in court. So I waved. And I smiled. And I swallowed it. The moment that almost broke me was last week. Harper came downstairs after school, put her backpack on the kitchen counter, and said, "Dad, can I go in my treehouse?" I was standing at the sink. I didn't turn around. I said, "Not right now, sweetheart." She said, "It's my treehouse. You built it for me. Why can't I go in it?" I turned around. She was standing there in her school hoodie, her hair in a ponytail, looking at me with this expression that was half confused and half something else, something that looked a lot like the beginning of understanding that the world isn't always fair, and that understanding was breaking my heart. I didn't have an answer that a 13-year-old would accept. Because the honest answer was, because a 61-year-old retired cop built a fence around it and is paying a lawyer to argue that it's his. And that's insane. It sounds insane even writing it now. I said, "We're working on it, Harper." She went upstairs and closed her door. Quietly. Update 4, the hearing. The case finally went to a hearing in Jackson County Circuit Court. I took a day off work. Stacy took a day off work. We sat in a courtroom behind Kim and waited. Kim presented 2 surveys. The original from 2016 when we bought the house, and the new one from Thomas Reed at Cornerstone Land Surveying. Both showed the same thing. The fence was 4.7 feet inside my property line. Not ambiguous. Not debatable. 4 feet, 8.5 inches. Then it was Phil's turn. Phil presented Gerald's survey, the one Gerald had referenced that day on his porch when he told me mine was wrong. The survey was done by a company called Fast Survey KC. Kim stood up. "Your Honor," she said, in that quiet voice that I now recognized as her version of loading a weapon. I'd like to note for the record that Fast Survey KC is not a licensed surveying firm in the state of Missouri. I was unable to locate any state licensure, any registration, or any individual surveyor credentials associated with this company. The judge, Judge Patricia Torres, looked at Phil. She had reading glasses on, and she looked at him over the top of them, which is a thing I've only ever seen in movies, but apparently judges actually do in real life. "Counselor," she said, "is your surveyor licensed in this state?" Phil paused. It was a short pause, but it was the kind of pause that fills an entire courtroom. Then he said, "Your Honor, I'd like to request a brief recess to consult with my client." "Denied," Judge Torres said. "Answer the question." Phil said he would need to verify the surveyor's credentials. Judge Torres looked at the two surveys. She looked at the photos. She looked at the fence measurements. And she made her ruling. The fence was on my property. Gerald had 45 days to remove it at his own expense. If he failed to do so, I was authorized to remove it and bill Gerald for the cost. The adverse possession claim was denied. The acquiescence defense was denied. Judge Torres wrote in her ruling, and I have this printed out and framed in my basement, the respondent's fence is not on or near the property line. It is unambiguously on the petitioner's property. The court finds no basis for the adverse possession defense given the timeline involved. Unambiguously. I've never loved a word more in my life. Kim turned around and gave me a nod. Not a smile. A nod. Like, we did it, but we shouldn't have had to. She was right. We shouldn't have had to. Update 5, day 46, and after. Gerald didn't remove the fence. Of course he didn't. Day 45 came and went. The fence stood there, same as ever, stained cedar in the Missouri sun, sitting 4.7 feet inside my property like a monument to stubbornness. Day 46. I woke up at 6 in the morning. I called KC Fence Pros in Raytown, a crew I'd already lined up because Kim had told me to be ready. 3 guys showed up at 8 o'clock with a truck, tools, and a dumpster. I set up my phone on a tripod on the back porch. I recorded the entire thing. Every post pulled. Every plank removed. Every screw. 3 hours of footage. Kim had told me to document everything, and I documented everything. Gerald watched from his kitchen window. I could see him standing there behind the glass. He didn't come outside. He didn't say a word. Pam came outside. She walked across her yard, stopped near the property line, the real one, the one with the orange stakes, and looked at the crew pulling out fence posts. "You're really doing this," she said. I looked at her. I thought about 8 months of court filings. I thought about $9,200 in legal fees. I thought about Harper asking me why she couldn't go in her own treehouse. I thought about the destined trip we canceled. I thought about every single time I waved at this woman in my driveway and smiled when I wanted to scream. "Good morning, Pam," I said. She went back inside. The crew finished by noon. They hauled everything away. Where Gerald's fence had been, there was a strip of bare dirt and orange survey stakes. The backyard looked bigger. It looked right. It looked like ours again. Harper came home from school that afternoon. She walked in the back door, looked out the window, and froze. "Dad," she said, "the fence is gone." "Yep. Can I go?" She went out the back door, crossed the yard, climbed the rope ladder, and sat in her treehouse. I watched from the kitchen window. She pulled a book out of her backpack. She'd brought it with her, she'd been ready, and she sat up there reading. She stayed for 2 hours. I didn't call her in for dinner until the lights started to fade. Jackson went outside about 20 minutes after Harper. He grabbed his football, ran to the far corner of the yard, and threw it as high and as far as he could. Then he yelled, screamed, really, so loud I could hear him through the closed window. "Dad, I can reach the corner again." "Yeah, buddy, you can." And Biscuit. Within a day, Biscuit had resumed his laps. Back and forth along the back fence line, not Gerald's fence, because that's gone now. The real boundary, marked by nothing but stakes and dirt. Biscuit didn't care about the legal details. He just wanted his path back. He ran it until he was panting, then he came inside, drank half his water bowl, and fell asleep on the kitchen floor. Gerald filed an appeal. Because of course he did. Kim says it will go nowhere. She says the ruling was clean, the evidence was unambiguous, and the appeals court will uphold it without a second thought. But it will cost me another $3,000 in legal fees to respond. Total legal costs so far, $9,200 and climbing. I don't care. I mean, I care. I'm a fleet manager, not a hedge fund guy. $9,200 is real money to me. That's real. That hurts. But my daughter has her treehouse. My son has his corner. My dog has his path. That's my backyard. That's my family's space. And no typed letter, no HOA complaint, no unlicensed survey, and no 6-foot cedar fence is going to take it from us. Gerald hasn't said a word to me since the fence came down. Not one word. He mows his lawn. He edge trims with his level. He goes inside. He doesn't look at me. Fine. I didn't need his friendship. I just needed my property line. Pam still says, "Good morning," every day. Every single day. Same tone. Same little wave. Same smile. I don't know if it's a power move or if she genuinely thinks this is all water under the bridge. I don't spend energy trying to figure it out. I wave. I say it back. Stacy's rule still holds. Don't give them anything. Speaking of Stacy. Last week, Stacy baked a batch of chocolate chip cookies. She put them in a Tupperware container, walked them over to Gerald and Pam's porch, and left them there with a handwritten note that said, "No hard feelings." I said, "Really?" She said, "Kill them with kindness, Derek. It's more fun." Gerald left the cookies on the porch. They sat there for 3 days in the Tupperware until they went stale. Pam eventually brought the empty container back and set it on our porch without a word. I washed it and put it back in the cabinet. Jackson saw the cookies sitting on Gerald's porch on day 2. He looked at them, looked at me, and said, "Dad, Mr. Gerald is weird." I put my hand on his shoulder. "Yeah, buddy," I said. "Some people are." So, what did I learn? Get a survey when you buy your house. Keep it. Know your property lines. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't wait. Don't assume your neighbor is acting in good faith just because he waves at you every morning or because his wife brings you tomatoes from her garden once a summer. Document everything. Every conversation. Every interaction. Every piece of paper. Get a lawyer early, even if it hurts financially. If I'd waited, Gerald's adverse possession argument would have only gotten stronger with time. Kim told me that. "You did the right thing moving fast," she said. "Time is the enemy in encroachment cases. And don't let anyone tell you it's just a fence or just a few feet. 400 square feet of my property. My daughter's treehouse. My son's corner. My dog's path. That's not just a few feet. That's where my family lives. I'll update again after the appeal is resolved. Kim says it should be done within a few months. I'll pay the $3,000. I'll show up to court again. I'll sit behind Kim again. And if Gerald builds another fence, I'll do the whole thing again. But for now, tonight, Jackson and I threw a football in the backyard until it got dark. Harper was up in the treehouse with her book. Biscuit was doing laps. And Stacy was on the back porch, drinking iced tea, watching all of it. That's what 400 square feet looks like when it's yours. Edit. Yes, I'm going to pursue the legal fees. Kim says Missouri allows recovery of attorney's fees in encroachment cases where the encroachment was willful. Gerald hired an unlicensed surveyor to justify building a fence on my property. We think that qualifies. That's a conversation for another day, but I wanted to mention it since several people have asked. Edit 2. The treehouse is fine. Gerald didn't touch it or damage it in any way. I inspected it thoroughly before I let Harper go up. The rope ladder needed replacing anyway, the weather got to it, so I put up a new one. Same turquoise paint on the railing. Stacy touched it up. Edit 3. For everyone asking, no, I do not know why Gerald did this. I don't know if he genuinely believed the property line was where he put the fence, or if he knew it was wrong and did it anyway. I don't know if it was about the basketball hoop, or Biscuit, or the Christmas lights, or something I'm not even aware of. Kim said it doesn't matter why. The law doesn't care why. The fence was on my land, and now it's not. That's the whole story.